Chapter 18. Prisoners. Nancy's first impulse was to dash forward and try to help Joanne, but instantly she realized the foolishness of such an act. George half started toward Joanne, but Nancy restrained her. "Wait," she whispered tensely. If the situation had been grave before, it was even more serious now. With Joanne captured, there was no one to go for help. The girls must depend entirely on themselves to escape from the cave. No one at the farmhouse knew that they were doing anything more than watching the Black Snake colony from a safe distance. "Let me go!" Joanne cried, struggling to free herself. "Where did she come from?" Maurice Hale demanded unpleasantly. "I saw her hiding among the bushes," the guard informed him. "She was spying, but she got just a little too curious." "Spying, eh?" A harsh expression crossed the leader's face. "Well, we know what to do with snoopers." "It's all a mistake," Joanne murmured, on the verge of tears. "I didn't mean any harm. I'm Mrs. Byrd's granddaughter, and I was merely curious to know more about the cult." Even as Joanne spoke, her eyes traveled about the room, noting the stacks of money and the queer printing presses. She tried not to show that she understood their significance, but it was too late. The leader had seen her startled expression. "So," he drawled smartly, "this time your curiosity has been the means of getting you into serious trouble. You'll learn, by the time we get through with you, not to meddle in affairs that don't concern you." He turned quickly to Sneed. "Al, see that no one leaves this room." "Yes, Chief," the guard answered. Nancy wondered what he had in mind. Just then Maurice Hale continued in a cold, harsh voice. "Just to make sure that other spies haven't been pulling a fast one on us, I'll have everyone remove his mask at once. Be mighty quick about it, too." "No!" Bess whimpered aloud. Then, realizing what she had done, she covered her mouth and sank back against the wall. All heads turned in her direction. Nancy and her friends had deliberately delayed in removing their masks, but now Nancy knew their effort to gain time was doomed. With Al Sneed still blocking the door, things looked black. Most of the others already had stripped off their headgear. In addition to Maurice Hale and Al Sneed, Nancy immediately recognized Yvonne Wong and Pete, the man who had spoken to her on the train. Next, she spotted Mr. Kent, and finally, the woman with the upswept hairdo who had brought her the faked letter. "That woman's the same one I saw at the service station with the 3 men, Nancy thought. If she hadn't changed her hairstyle, I might have recognized her the night she delivered the note. The other unmasked members were strangers to Nancy. Tensely now, she watched as the leader stood before Bess. "Nothing to be afraid of, dear," he said, and gently lifted off the ghostly head covering. The next instant, Maurice Hale practically shrieked, "A spy!" His face contorted with rage. Maurice snatched the white cloth headpieces from George's face, then Nancy's. Their scheme was exposed to all the members of the counterfeit gang. For an instant, there was stunned silence. Then angry cries arose from the Black Snake colony members. "They're the ones who bought the blue jade perfume from me!" Yvonne Wong shrieked. Al Sneed glared at Nancy. "Yeah, I knew something was wrong when you came into the office wearing the blue jade. I smelled it, but didn't let on." He then pointed accusingly toward Joanne. "That girl is the one who applied at our city office for a job. When she told me who she was and where she was from, I knew she was the last person in the world we'd want to hire." "That crazy idea of yours about someone with farm experience," the leader cried. "We didn't need anybody to talk to our agents about cows and chickens. But this place is in the country, Al Sneed defended himself. And in our codes we use a lot of that kind of lingo. Silence, Maurice yelled, and turned to Joanne. So you thought you'd get a job at our office and spy on us? And your meddling friend Nancy Drew was in cahoots with you? No! Oh, no! Joanne cried out. It was only by accident. I wanted to find a job and help my grandmother. Nancy was just trying to help me locate the office. Don't expect us to believe a trumped-up story like that, the leader said harshly. We know all about why you two have been snooping around ever since Al had Pete trail you from Riverside Heights. What's more, we know how to deal with such people. Hale turned menacingly to Nancy. You'll wish you'd taken Pete's advice when he called your pal, he indicated George, and warned her that you'd better mind your own business. Oh, Maurice, please don't be too harsh with the girls, a timid voice pleaded. They didn't mean any harm. As she finished, the speaker removed her mask. Nancy turned quickly to see the woman she had helped in the woods and later had taken to town. So she's a counterfeiter, Nancy told herself incredulously. I can't believe it. Didn't mean any harm, Maurice drawled sarcastically. Oh, no, of course not. They only wanted to land the whole Hale syndicate in jail. Not that you would care. If I had known what a whiner you are, I'd never have married you. Mind your own business and let me take care of this. In spite of the seriousness of her own situation, Nancy felt pity for the woman. Undoubtedly, as the wife of such a tyrant as Maurice Hale, she had stayed with him against her will. She had hated the life he had forced her to leave, but evidently she had been powerless to escape from it. No wonder the poor woman took a chance and slipped away from time to time, Nancy thought. Frightened by the harsh words of her husband, Mrs. Hale moved back into a far corner of the room. Nancy wished she could help her in some way, but realized that the woman dared not say more. What'll we do with these girls? The leader demanded. We can't let 'em go. They know too much. On all sides, angry mutterings arose. Yvonne Wong heartlessly proposed that the girls be tied up and left prisoners in the cave. But Maurice Hale ruled down that suggestion. We'll have to get 'em out of here, he said. They'll be missed and a searching party might visit this joint. How about the shack at the river? It's in such a desolate spot, no one would think of looking there until after. He did not finish the sentence, but from the sinister expression on his face, Nancy and her friends guessed his meaning. He intended to lock them up in the cabin and leave them without food. A cry of anguish came from the leader's wife. Rushing forward, she clutched her husband frantically by the arm. Oh, Maurice, you couldn't be that cruel. Mr. Hale flung her away from him with a force that sent the woman reeling against the wall. She uttered a little moan of pain and sank to the floor. Oh! Bess screamed. Even the cult members were startled. Be quiet, ordered their chief. The cruel action aroused Nancy. For an instant, all eyes were centered on the woman, and Nancy thought she saw her opportunity. Quick as a flash, she made a rush for the exit. Bess and George, equally alert, darted after her. Al Sneed, who stood in the opening, was taken completely by surprise. He tried to hold his ground, but the girls were too strong for him. He managed to detain Bess and George, but Nancy wriggled from his grasp. She hesitated when she saw her friends had failed. Go on, Nancy, Bess shrieked. You must escape. Nancy darted into the next room, while George and Bess struggled with their captor, trying to block the door and give their friend more time. Stop that girl, Maurice Hale shouted angrily. If you let her get away, I'll... Nancy plunged into the tunnel and was swallowed up by darkness. She ran for her life and for the lives of her friends, realizing this probably was her only chance. The long white robe hindered her, but there was no time to tear it off. She held it high above her knees. Once she stumbled, but caught herself and rushed on frantically. The tunnel seemed to have no end. Behind her, Nancy could hear pounding footsteps and angry shouts. She thought the men must be gaining. If only she could reach the mouth of the cave! The tunnel wound in and out, and several times Nancy brushed against the rough stone wall. Route was so circuitous. The route was so circuitous that she began to think she had taken a wrong turn. Then, just as she was giving up hope, Nancy spotted a dim light far ahead and knew she must be nearing the mouth of the cave. No one appeared to be left guarding the entrance. Her only chance. In a moment more, she had reached the open air. "Saved!" Nancy breathed. At that instant, a dark figure loomed up from the grass. Nancy felt a heavy hand on her shoulder. End of chapter 18.